Your personality isn't the problem. Your personality is the path. Nature makes no mistakes, and your symptoms are no exception. Welcome to Mind Over Symptom, where we uncover the deeper pattern. Mental health means being sane, which means being in contact with reality. So, what is mental illness? In conventional medicine, the authority on this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. In that model, mental illness is largely defined in terms of psychosis, and psychosis is a distorted sense of reality, experiencing something other than what is actually there. And what's going on when we're distorting reality is a mechanism called psychic equivalence. Psychic equivalence is when you use your psyche to take raw sensory data, construct an interpretation of the data, and then mistake that interpretation for reality itself. So psyche, brain, and body work together to generate a fabricated version of reality and then believe it. Now, why would you do that? From a germanische Heilkunde perspective, this is not a malfunction. It's a response to what you feel is a threat to your survival. You use your psyche, brain, and body to reorganize your perception in order to help you deal with a biological conflict in your psyche. And in that state, your entire organism goes into emergency energy-saving mode. It creates shortcuts. It fills in gaps. It substitutes perception. And that's what we call psychic equivalence. So what conventional medicine labels as mental illness is, from the perspective of the 5 biological laws of the Germanic New Medicine, a mechanism that allows us to continue functioning while we're dealing with what we perceive to be a threat. Everyone does this. The difference is only in how consistently and how broadly it shapes a person's experience. When the pattern becomes pervasive, so it's affecting your identity, your relationships, your behavior, then that's what gets labeled as a personality disorder. But the underlying mechanism is the same. It's a resistance of reality. Now, I talked about all of that because I want to talk about personality. Your personality isn't who you are, and it's not something your brain produces like a machine generating output. Personality is something you originate. What your personality is your structure of attention, desire, fear, defenses, and behaviors. It's how you organize your experience in order to deal with what you perceive as threats to your survival. And here's how we can deconstruct this. Your attention determines what you focus on, and at the same time what you ignore. Your desires point to what you want to experience. Your fears point to what you're trying to avoid. Your defenses are the ways you protect yourself from perceived threats. And your behaviors are the strategies you use to try to resolve those threats. So what we call personality isn't a fixed identity or structure. It's a system. It's a system built around what you pay attention to, what you want, what you're afraid of, and what you do about it. In other words, your personality is your mind tree, your collection of current special biological programs, but it's your mind tree in action. It is the enactment of your mind tree. Now, underneath your personality, underneath your strategies, underneath your biological conflicts, is your psyche or your unconscious mind. Your mind or psyche is made up of thoughts, which is a binary structure that you create by putting your attention on an idea. It's binary because when you put your attention on one idea, you simultaneously resist putting your attention on everything that is not that idea. So if you put your attention on the color red, you simultaneously resist or subconsciously say no to anything that is not red. So that's what a thought is. It's a 2-part thing that you're doing in your mind to experience one reality while resisting everything that isn't that reality. And every thought exists for a reason, which is to fulfill an intention to relate with reality in some way. A desire to experience something. It's an intention. But that desire has not yet been fulfilled. when you fulfill it, when you relate, when you contact reality in the way you wanted to and interact, the thought is gone. Okay? So your mind or psyche is made of thoughts, and every thought is an as yet unfulfilled intention to relate, to experience some aspect of reality. And when you fulfill those intentions, the thoughts disappear. You have a clear mind, and it feels great. Feelings and emotions are the biological side of, that is, the brain's instant and automatic response to thoughts. When we fulfill our unfulfilled intentions to relate, we not only clear our mind, we also complete our emotions, and the feelings are cleared too. And biological conflicts are structures in the psyche or mind of two thoughts in conflict with one another, two unfulfilled intentions to relate that are in resistance to each other and therefore creating charge, which is actually what makes us feel threatened. We know that behaviors are compulsive strategies of our psyche, brain, and body that we use to try to solve biological conflicts in the psyche. So once we fulfill those unfulfilled intentions to relate within our psyche, the biological conflicts in our psyche no longer have any charge because we no longer need to resist reality. So the compulsive behaviors disappear and we are free of the mind tree, or at least of a piece of it. In short, by fulfilling unfulfilled intentions to relate and contacting reality instead of resisting it, we clear our psyche, solve our biological conflicts, solve our mind tree, and no longer need to try to stay safe, loved, valuable, in control, or free. We just become safe, loved, valuable, in control, or free. If we integrate our mind tree, if we solve all of our conflicts, does our personality disappear? Do we lose ourselves and become automatons devoid of uniqueness? No, because what remains after solving our conflicts isn't emptiness or nothingness. What remains is our essential self, our quintessence, that which was there all along, originating your psyche, brain, and body, and mind tree, and personality. The originator remains. Your source consciousness remains. And now you're in full contact with it. There's no existential isolation of any kind. There's just you and reality. Your mind tree is your problem-solving system, and your mind tree defines a problem as the absence of what you desire. When you resolve your conflicts and integrate or clear your mind tree, you don't become less yourself. You reconnect with what you truly desire in your quintessential self, and as a result, by fulfilling your intentions to relate and clearing the compulsions of your personality, you actually become more yourself. You become your essential self, and you begin experiencing what you actually desire. Many wellness practices promise to give us health, as though health is something missing. But health is actually our default state. Yet we can experience wellness so rarely that wellness feels like some strange state that we just don't have a lot of familiarity with. So we feel trapped in our mind tree, we feel trapped in our personality, trapped in our health conditions, and we experience ourselves as victims. But that feeling isn't reality. We are not prisoners of life. The door is unlocked. In fact, the door doesn't even exist anywhere except in our imagination. But most of the time, we just don't know that. The path back to wellness is reconnecting with your essential self. For my clients, I use clearing communication in the process I created called the Mind Tree Integration Process to help people to fulfill their as yet unfulfilled intentions to relate, which completes their thoughts, resolves their biological conflicts, and frees up their essential selves to fully contact reality. I also use clearing communication on myself. These days, mostly using the technique of mind shifting, which was created by Stevie Kent of the Mind Shifting Academy. But something else I use as a path back to my essential self is the Enneagram of personality. The Enneagram, a word that means 9 drawing or 9 symbol, is a map of 9 natural personality patterns. It's a study of the 9 structures of habitual fears, desires, defenses, and growth paths that shape how people move through life. Like we are born male or female with this racial background or that bone structure and so on. We're also born with one of 9 personality types. Our personality type, or Enneagram type, is going to powerfully influence our psyche, and in particular, it's going to powerfully affect the ways that we're going to tend to resist reality. That's because our Enneagram type has a specific basic fear, a specific basic desire, and a specific path to essence, or back home. In other words, rather than personality being a product of the machinery of our brain, as conventional medicine views it, our personality is actually something we originate that comprises the obstacle we fight, the desire behind the obstacle, or beyond the obstacle, and our path back to wellness and wholeness. Each of the 9 personality types has a pattern by which it loses connection with instincts, certainty, and feelings, and it begins compensating. Here's a quick summary of how the 9 different types do that. This is very simplified. Type 1 avoids imperfection, and in doing so, it loses essential goodness. Type 2 avoids being unloved, and in doing so, it loses essential love. Type 3 avoids worthlessness and loses essential value. Type 4 avoids lack of identity and loses essential uniqueness. Type 5 avoids incompetence and loses essential capability. Type 6 avoids uncertainty and loses essential guidance. Type 7 avoids pain and loses essential satisfaction or fulfillment. Type 8 avoids vulnerability and loses essential strength. Type 9 avoids conflict and loses essential unity. Resolution, integration, and return to the essential self happen when we observe our pattern, stop obeying our pattern, and redirect our attention to deliberately contact the reality we've been unconsciously trying to avoid. In other words, we heal when we contact the reality we have been resisting. And that's exactly what resolving a biological conflict in the psyche is. Each type will have their own typical way that they do this. Type 1 goes from correcting to accepting. Type 2 goes from earning love to receiving love. Type 3 goes from performing value to embodying value. Type 4 goes from longing for identity to inhabiting a self, or selfhood. Type 5 goes from self-preservation and conservation to engaging life. Type 6 goes from seeking certainty to trusting guidance. Type 7 goes from escaping pain to receiving the present. Type 8 goes from defending strength to revealing strength. And Type 9 goes from avoiding disruption to participating fully. No matter which type of personality you have, your path to wellness is to stop trying to secure that essential quality, stop trying to solve existential isolation from outside, and start recognizing it as already present. I am not saying this is easy work, but this process of returning to our essential self is actually the solution to every so-called mental illness, along with every other health issue that we originate when we create a special biological program in our psyche, and vice versa. Resolving our biological conflicts and completing our special biological programs is how we return home to our perfect essential selves, our quintessence. Healing, integrating, or resolving is not about fixing yourself. It's about observing instead of reacting. Your personality doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be understood so you can stop using it to avoid what you actually want. The moment you observe your personality, your mind tree, your biological conflict, or even just your feeling, instead of denying it, then you're no longer in it. You are in essence. That's the doorway, that's the key, and that's the path back to wellness. This has been Mind Over Symptom with Lishwi Springford, where symptoms are not the enemy and you are your own authority. For more, visit mindtreehealth.co.